we say howdy, at the beginning of the event to get everybody's attention. Hello. One more time. It took a little bit of time to actually practice howdy for many years. Oh, sorry. Okay, good. Thank you so much for coming to our Laser Talk series. This is February. Hi, my name is Hwa-Young Sa, Director of the Institute for Applied Creativity. We're so pleased to present the February Laser Talk to you. We're part of big laser network. We're one of hundreds of laser network around the world. We are the only one has the laser based in university. Everything else is laser in certain city, but we're in Texas A&M laser. Okay, so I'm so proud of that because we're not just in College Station, we're in different cities too. Okay, that was justification for me. But anyways, we have a lot of faculty members today. I'm so glad you're here, and hopefully we can find great interest as well as get inspired, and then also maybe find some future collaboration as well. I really appreciate our staff from Markham, also performance technology over there, our staffs, Shipra here, and also I don't know who else, many people. Oh, actually, sorry, University Galleries providing us this nice space for us. Thank you so much, and Lynn is going to introduce our speaker.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. What I want to say is you can always tell when work inspires, and what I loved was over the last 15, 20 minutes, the buzz of energy in the room with all the great conversations and warmth. And what I think partly contributed to that was the music that you were hearing, which our guest is going to tell you about. So we will let the work speak for the great inspiration that it provides. It will be our normal format of about a 30-minute talk followed by a conversation, which you are all most welcome to be a part of. So without further ado, we'll get the event going. Please welcome Philipe Pasquier.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming. Thanks a lot to Jinsil, Lynn for the invitation, and for everyone taking care of the organization today. So yes, for 30 minutes you're going to have an immersive experience in French accent, and I'll try to do my best to make myself understood. And so that's my opportunity to introduce some of the work we've been doing in the last few decades at the Meta Creation Lab for Creative AI, which is a research creation lab that I direct at Simon Fraser University in the School for Interactive Arts and Technology, in which since 2008 we've been looking at the partial or complete automation of creative tasks, basically working on generative algorithm. And very relevant to this laser series, we really have an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach. I'm a mathematician by training, and we make algorithms. When those algorithms work, of course, we publish them, we evaluate them. When they work, we work with the industry to deploy them. And there's a very, very strong demand at the moment for generative systems. But what I want to talk about today is the art we make with those systems. Both the art we make ourselves as artists, first-person perspective on those systems, but also the collaborations I'm going to present today with other artists to have a second-person view on those systems. We really do believe in participatory design, this idea that we're going to go nowhere with computer systems in general, but with AI systems in particular, if the people who are going to use them are not involved in their design from the get-go. So we really believe in that idea, and in that sense, we really have a strong opinion on the synergies between research and creation. And as we do develop those generative systems, they usually fall along a continuum, and that's a continuum that nobody talks about, but that I find is really interesting and explain why generative art and artists are often, if not always, the pioneers when it comes to new ideas and research innovation. Because in fact, we are developing systems with that are ending up in softwares used by thousands of people, and we are looking at the scientific study of those generative systems. When applied to creative domains, we call that computational creativity, But on the other hand, it is also the case that those generative systems, when used by a particular artist or when developed by a particular artist, then they have a very specific aesthetic, and then they become not just a system but an artwork. And that's the idea of generative art, in which the artist delegates to a machine, to a system, to a procedure, some of the artistic decisions, and that's usually a deliberated choice. And so I've been interested in generative art for a long, long time. I started computing as I was a kid and a geek in the 80s, and I was working with a number of colleagues, and still ongoing, with a collective in France called Robonome, and we were fascinated by analog synthesizers. And for those of you who have played with those analog synthesizers, they're really interesting because they have a character and they have a personality of their own. If you open the window and the temperature in the room change, then they're gonna start changing the sound as well. And very quickly with this group, we were delegating more and more of the work to the machines. We would make an assemblage, a rhizome. We would make a connected assemblage of little machines that were acting like agents, and they would communicate through those cables with each other. And often the music would be both created by us, the musicians manipulating those machines, but also by the machines themselves, or so it felt. And from there on, we started exploring this idea of generative music. And we did number of collaboration at the time. And that's when I got interested in linking at the time I was students in computer science and math, linking that with the artistic practice. And from there on, it's always been this idea of working and designing machines, algorithms, and systems that have interesting behaviors. And interesting behaviors often is this type of behavior that falls between something predictable, maybe with repetition. In music, repetition and variations are really important, but on the edge of it, on the edge of being entropy, noise, randomness, or chaos. On that edge between something that is periodic and predictable and something that is not. That's often where everything interesting happens. And then I worked with dance companies and with theater companies, using the body as a generator and linking the body and the bodies together to drive the generation of content, music and lighting. I was designing at the time those floors that were conductive floors that allow us to tell when dancers are touching each other, and we're using touch and contact as a generative material in artwork making. And so I continued working there until I reached the end of my PhD studies, and I was working on artificial agents at the time, and that's when I took position at Simon Fraser University and started the Meta Creation Lab. And since then, we've been continuously working on this notion of artificial agents. An algorithm, a machine that can perceive the world it's in and that can act on that world. When it's embodied, we call it a robot. When it's not, it's an artificial agent. And in the last 2 years, this notion of agents, for some reason, resurfaced as being one of the main paradigm of AI as we're being sold it. So this is actually on show, on display right now at the Guangzhou Biennale, where we did work with dancers to transform them into video agents, when we can do facade projection and all sorts of things, where we can decide what trajectories those dancers are going to take. Those trajectories have not been recorded or videotaped, they're being generated. A thread of work in the last 2 decades that have been quite consistent is work on musical agents. So those musical agents are agents that can listen to musicians, other agents, artificial or human, and play along with them. And that's where the research creation really started to become interesting, integrating machine learning in those agents. Basically, those agents learn music like a lot of experimental musicians by listening to music, and they would memorize the sound vocabulary that a given composer would use, and then they would build a model that allows them to reason in such a way that they can play along with you. Typically what they do is given what Philipe just played and what I just played as an agent, what continuation, what should I play next to imitate the style of that composer I was listening to? And so basically they're imitation machine, and often AI systems are basically imitating the data they're being fed. So if you train such agents on the music, for example, of our colleague Memes, it was a collaboration with some Turkish artist. This is Ars Electronica 2017, and here the agent is playing alone, so you can listen to what it sounds like. And there's another system that generates visuals in real time, and you see the coupling between the two is something that a human operator will not be able to do. All right, so that was the agent alone, working with visual generation and very tight coupling. Often we want to use those generative systems to do things humans can't do, because otherwise we'd rather humans do them. But of course, those agents are interactive, and so what's interesting is to play with them, alongside them, and that's the Revive project that is still ongoing, and we played Mutech with a version of it in Montreal last year, in which we improvise with agents that have been trained on the music of dead composers. So this idea of digital afterlife, a bit critical of it as well, and sometimes controversial. And I really recommend, by the way, if you go by Montreal, the Society for Art and Technology, which has a beautiful dome, people lie down, there's sound spatialization, etc. And so we play live on stage with those agents, and that's the notion of co-creation. This idea that one of the ways to work with AI in art is to accept and indulge the AI system as a creative partner. Here there's a risk-taking, because if the agents start playing things that are really not interesting, you're on stage and it's too late. Oops. But of course we rehearse with them and we sort of adapt as a little band with those AI agents. And so when we play with them together, in concerts, we improvise. And I always wanted to play with David Tudor, and he's dead. So that was a way to make that happen. And those agents are actually pretty good. I'll play a short excerpt here. And then we try to visualize. I know a lot of you here are interested in visualization. We try to visualize what the agents are doing, which is a way to embody a little bit, because otherwise you can't see them, you can only hear them, and it becomes very quickly abstract. And so that's an ongoing thread of work. Some other researchers, and we got some award for some of the science behind it, some other researchers are pushing that work, as there's now a community of people and a series of concerts around our friend at IRCAM in Paris, and otherwise groups of people that are working with those agents. So, but why would we use those generative systems? To access some aesthetics that we can't access otherwise, and in general as well, because we want eventually to have systems that are capable of generating the right content at the right time. Designing those systems is an art, is the art of generative art. But this idea of generating the right content at the right time, I won't talk about our scientific research here too much, but it's something that is going to be very consequential, because it's one of the reasons why AI is going to be deployed a little bit everywhere. The only reason we have many students as faculty is economical. If you're a prince or a sultan, because there's still some of them out there, you would have your own professor. And for games, for art, for conversation, for education, it is the case that the flow zone of everyone varies differently. If it's too easy, I lose you. If it's too hard, I lose you. And you in particular and everyone will change dynamically. Some students learn really fast. You better give them content that is more challenging quickly. Some students learn slower. I know I do. And then you don't want to move too fast. And so one of the main reasons why those real-time generative systems are of importance at the moment is because eventually they're going to allow to go towards adaptive systems. And I won't talk about it today, but a lot of our research now is not just generation, because we know that we can do it, it's functional generation. I'll generate music for you to calm down, generate music for you to relax or to focus. I would generate the right content at the right time for a given effect. Okay, so that's the musical agents and those real-time systems. The second type of systems we've been developing and making artwork with are computer-assisted creativity systems, systems that content creators use offline to help them generate content. Those are being made very, very popular through the rise of prompting and all those interfaces which allow you to create any sort of media by prompting your way through. This is in fact not new, and of course in research we were a little bit ahead of the game, and ChatGPT is 2022, but in 2012 we were already deploying prompt-based systems. Here it's a system called Audio Metaphor. You can still use it, it's online, and you prompt the description of a soundscape, of an audio track and sound effect, a length for it. You decide if it starts happy and finish sad, or how eventful the soundtrack should be, and it will retrieve sound, classify those sounds, cut those sounds, put them into a timeline that you can then import into your favorite digital audio workstation to work with. If you don't like it, you generate another time. And just finding those 50 sounds and putting them into background, foreground for you, that will save you hours of work. The interesting part is not necessarily to find those sounds and source them, is to put them together. If you use that system to, let's say, request a waterfall in Thailand, it might sound like this. And then you can ask for whatever you want. And when we give those systems, those generative systems to artists and creators, it's often surprising how many ways they find to use or abuse those systems. And so you can, for example, ask for something a little bit more abstract and get something indeed more abstract as a result. So that's an example here of an early computer-assisted creativity system and generative system using prompting back in 2012. But this system is still alive, and in fact we just did an evaluation of it showing that it's not as good as a professional sound designer, which is a good news for sound designers, but it does save a lot of time. Often the promise of those systems is to lower the barrier of entry for beginners and to allow professionals to explore more. Because let's face it, when you're in a project, you're not going to do undo, which is the only thing you can do to go back. You're not going to do undo a dozen click just to start in a completely different direction. And often people get cornered into their own project. There's plenty of artworks made by ourselves and others using that particular system. Check the website if you want to know more about it. So that was an early example of prompting, but it turns out prompting is problematic. A lot of people are criticizing it, and I know I do too. In fact, when I make music, if I could tell you with words, if I can describe with words what I do with sound, then I would probably stop doing it with sound. And so prompting by definition is not necessarily going to get us there. And at the legal level, leave alone the philosophical level, prompting is not enough to guarantee authorship. In other words, when you prompt a system, you're not the author of the work that comes out in the most part. So that's problematic. And in the case of music making, prompting has other issues. And so to fight a little bit the text box vortex that we are confronted with, we've been working on alternatives. And in computer-assisted composition, we've been developing tools and done quite a bit of collaboration with the industry at that level for computer-assisted composition. So here this is not making sound, this is making MIDI or scores if you wish, and it allows you to use your own music or someone else's music, maybe music in the public domain, Mozart here in this case, to use that material as the beginning, the starting point to work with the system. And all of a sudden, what you're going to do is transform your own work by using the system. Add to it, remove, make some changes. And it turns out that when you transform an artwork, you get an artwork. So in that case, you do have authorship over the result, which for a lot of artists is important. This is actual Mozart. I asked the system to rewrite those parts. So this is copyright-free, new, original, Mozart-sounding piano. And then I can do things that Mozart couldn't, like adding a guitar and a vibraphone. And the music itself would be like a prompt. Whatever I add, it will always work with what's before, what's after, what's above, and what's under. I can change one bar, I can change one note. And with those systems, instead of being creator, you very quickly become curator. All of a sudden, it's not so much about what you can compose, it's more what do you like and can you get there using that system. And everyone has preferences and taste, and therefore everyone can now become using those systems. You can try it for yourself. This one is online. It's really good for variation, so we've been working with the industry. It's used a lot in a video game for software that composers use for video game. We in fact have grants with Audiokinetics based in Montreal. We've been funded by Steinberg, and the system has been deployed in Cubase for evaluation purposes. We've been doing an Ableton plugin, and we've been working with synthesizers companies on deploying those systems. A lot of people in the music industry, a lot of the 6 million users of Ableton, they bought a music software or they bought a synthesizer because they want to make music. It's an aspirational purchase, but they will never finish a track. Maybe with those systems they can eventually get somewhere. As I was saying, we use those systems ourselves. So here we made this little generator for the OPZ synthesizer by Teenage Engineering, and I myself made some music using that synthesizer and that generator, and we released some albums. I'll play you a short example here. In this case, it's house music, so more dancey. etc. For those who are interested in music made with the help of AI, I recommend checking the AI Song Contest. It's a yearly contest, all sorts of bands and musicians enter that contest, research groups, but also professional, independent musicians. And what's striking there, so we did enter the contest, and in fact we were finalists a few times. I could play some excerpts for the sake of showing you the diversity of output ones get, but what's interesting is in that context, you get to realize how there's AI diversity. And despite what for-profit Californian company makers believe, there's so many types of AI, and in the making of music, you can use AI in very many different capacity, and artists do. Sometimes you use AI only for the mastering at the end. Sometimes you write the lyrics with AI. Sometimes the AI is singing, the rest is human. Sometimes the AI is playing the drum, etc., etc. So it's quite interesting to see how artists will incorporate in their creative process those AI tools that we develop and others develop. I won't talk too much about the scientific research we do today because I want to focus on the art making, but we did do a lot of evaluation work. And part of this evaluation work is the participatory design I was talking about, is putting early version of those systems in beta testers' hands, in artists' hands. We're funded by the Canada Council for the Arts, Albums, are being released of artists using our systems, but we are really interested in the qualitative feedback. In fact, we have an artistic residency at the lab for the last 3 years. It's going to be the 3rd edition this year, in which we get composers from France, because we're funded by the French consulate in this case, come and work with us for an extended period of time in the lab and work with the students as they develop those systems. We, of course, also run more formal evaluations and studies with more participants. We just finished one on audio metaphor, actually. And here, I won't present to you much. What I want to say is we did indeed show that people work faster with AI, especially beginners, and they are better with AI. In fact, we grade their project without AI and with AI, and they get a better grade when they use the AI. Now, what's important, though, is that when you use AI, you can do fantastic things, yes, but do you feel this is your work? In fact, even beginners find that they lose a sense of authorship. And everyone here, I'm sure, has generated something with AI using a prompt in an image generation. And if I ask you, did you feel you were the author of that image? Probably none of you would raise their hand. And so there is really something that is happening here with prompting in particular, whereby there's a loss of authorship. And so we did studies with professionals to see, for people who get paid using, in this case, Cubase composers, professional composers, what does it mean to have to use, because that's where we're going, to have to use those generative systems every day, all day long. And so not only we make studies to see that the system works, that the quality is good, that it makes people efficient, but more importantly, is the system expressive enough? Are there enough control for the creator to express themselves and to feel that they retain authorship over what's come out? Or is it a collaboration between the AI and the creator, and that's fine? Or is it just, I'm the creator, but the work is great music, but it's not my music, it's the AI music that I'm just curating here. And I won't tell you what we found so that you get an incentive to read our papers. The last issue I want to address today, that I think we tackled by bringing, again, different types of AI models than the ones that are being advertised nowadays, is that a lot of the models, including the ones to generate music, they're trained on scrap data from the internet. As a researcher in Canada, under fair deal, I have the right to do that. Then I train a model, then the data is not in the model, and I show that the model doesn't plagiarize the data, it generates only original content. From there on, I can sell that model. And that's exactly what we've been doing when we work with companies. In fact, that's why companies work with us, because we have the right to scrap the internet during step 1. But that caused a lot of issues, and actual legal issues, whereby the artist, and maybe more importantly, more systematically, the stakeholders of the artist, big labels, etc., are just suing the companies that are releasing those tools. And so a lot of the tools that I just showed earlier, they've been used for research, but none of them has been released, because a lot of the company I work with, they don't want to lose their entire user base, because they already have a user base, because they add this one generative AI system, and then they end up with a lawsuit. So there's issues with big data and the fact that those models call for scrapping the entire internet. But it turns out, before big data, we had AI and machine learning, and everything was small data, and it was also working fine. And so we've been pushing a small data and model crafting approach in some of our tools, because we feel this is empowering artists a lot more than the current solutions. In fact, when we talk to artists, and here I switch to visual art, we find that artists don't want to use big data models trained on everyone else's work. What they want is to be able to train their own model on their own work, or very curated and selected data. So they don't want big data. They want to work with small data sets that are clean and ethical. They don't want to upload their life work on anyone's cloud. I work with indigenous nations in Canada, groups that would not trust anyone's cloud, especially if it's privately owned. So they want things that can run locally, potentially at video speed. They don't want to learn Python, and so they want systems with graphic interface so that they don't have to do coding. They want it to work in real time so they can do direct manipulation and find those sweet spots that they're interested in exploiting in their work. And eventually they want that it's free and open source, so that if someone knows programming, one can check that the software says what it does, what it says it does, and nothing else. If you look for that set of specification of a system you can install on your computer and run locally to train models without learning how to program, there is exactly none. And there's really good reason for that, because the companies have interest in getting your data at the beginning of any process. So we developed one, and it's called Autolium. And we got a little award at Ars Electronica last year for it. I won't go into the details, but it's online, it's free, and it works. You just have to have a GPU if you want to train models, but with any gaming machine, it works. It allows you to train models, to do super resolution, to do model blending, model mixing. There's an NDI output, everything can be controlled graphically, and or through OSC, so you can use it as a visual synthesizer. It runs in real time and allows direct manipulation. And by that we mean we can hook up transformers and really have an almost tactile relationship with those AI models. Of course, you can export videos, stills, memorize presets, and do model crafting, because often the first model you train with your data is not going to be the best one. But all of a sudden, you're empowered and you seize the means of production and you can train another model. Oh, I will remove those data, I will add this data, and then all of a sudden I craft iteratively a model that is mine and works. So we did ourselves a lot of artworks with this system, and a lot of collaborations with artists. Here this is Erika Lapala Jensen, a visual artist from Vancouver, that are happy to curate a data set and to train their model and to start exploiting it to make prints and video. The other thing about small data is that it is not that big data is superior and we can't afford it and it's not ethical. It is also a question of content and aesthetic. It turns out that so I work, for example, with one of my students, Arshia Soban, who is a calligraph. He does Arabic calligraphy, which is very alive as an art form. And if you ask a big data model to generate Arabic calligraphy, it will do something beautiful, except that it will invent Arabic character. And for anyone who knows Arabic calligraphy, this is actually quite insulting. And so there's two reasons for that. A lot of non-Western, non-Californian aesthetics in the data distribution are underrepresented. And when they are represented, they can also be represented with bias. And here in the case of calligraphy, a lot of the paintings from the 19th century by white male for white male, they were not bothering reproducing the Arabic character in those paintings, and that's a bias called Orientalism that was described in the 70s by Edward Said already. In other words, what I'm getting at here is if you want to do generative calligraphy, you can't use a big data model. You have to train your own model. And so we work with a lot of communities that are sitting on cultural artifacts and want to use AI, and they just can't use big data AI from California. So we make that, we made in this case those calligraphy model, and we derive artwork from them as well. In fact, we did assemble a number of pieces made with Autolium at the Autolium exhibition at Ars Electronica in 2024. So ourselves and others are using the system in performance. You can use it live in interactive installation. Here this is me playing at Music Acustica in China last year. I'll play an example, so that'll be my final example of this performance, in which everything sort of comes together because the visuals are generated in real time using Autolium, and I play live on stage with musical agents. So we get the musical agents involved and the Autolium system as well. Here is an example. All right. And so we give Autolium workshops, and maybe one day we'll get to give one in Texas. Right now we're scheduled for the end of the month at the University of Victoria, and we have a lot of demand from places where Western culture is not the dominant culture, and the current wave of AI model is not really useful to them. So what I'm saying here is that there is options with those tools to reappropriate the means of production by, instead of on the top left here, using big models, which you can only navigate, usually through prompting, not a great way to navigate, and they're trained on scrapped data set, you can eventually gain more, we feel, more authorship, more empower the artist to work in a more authentic way by curating and or using their own data, not only to navigate, but to adapt through fine-tuning, which you can also do in Autolium, or craft from scratch your own model. And so with Autolium, we cover this area here, and we think this is really what we observe is of interest to artists. And as I conclude, I want to point here at the fact that we really believe that those free open source tools are important, and that we need to develop AI commons, and that likewise for the internet, could have been and should have been maybe something public. It's been mostly privatized. We don't see why AI, like our roads or our postal system, shouldn't be developed as a common. In fact, for geopolitical reasons now, you can feel that every nation on earth is asking themselves the question of, oh yeah, we actually can't use Californian tools, we have to make our own. If you're interested in those type of discussions, there's a pretty big movement in Canada around the notion of AI commons, and we just released a report with Mutex, SAT, the Metaquestion Lab, and a number of other cultural actors in Canada around this idea of building commons for AI in digital creation. All right, so I'll stop here, and I would just want to say that I'm still mildly optimistic about the rise of AI, and I do believe that we can harness the power of those machines, not to replace artists, certainly not, but to expand and support our creativity, as we've done since the dawn of time with tools and instruments that are necessary to make art. So with that, I want to thank all my colleagues, team, and students with whom the work was done. If you're not tired of my French accent yet and you want more, I have 2 free online courses on the Cadence platform, which I think is the only MOOC that is looking at cultural and artistic skills. And if we teach for free online business and engineering at scale, it's important that we also give more creative skills and content, access to the world, to those content. So that's happening. In fact, at the university, we are now opening our programs and modularizing a little bit the way we teach. And if you're interested, we actually allow anyone and everyone to sign up for some of our undergraduate courses on AI in design and art. And so with that, I want to thank the funding bodies that make all that work possible. I'm lucky to be funded by Scientific Council, the Human Sciences Council, and the Art Council in Canada. You can find us online. And in terms of conferences, I will be this year at Ars Electronica, because I'll be chair of the research track of the Expanded Conference, which I highly recommend in visualization and animation, and visual art and generative art. And then I am running with a group of colleagues the AI Music Creativity Community, and it's already the 7th conference, and it will be in Berlin just after Ars Electronica in September. And with that, I want to thank you all for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Leave this on. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to turn this light on to give us a little bit more illumination here. And Philippe, I will give you this mic.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you, Waryong, for joining me as well. We would love to invite questions from you all, but also I know oh, great. Okay, perfect. We'll get started with those then. We'll start with you, Michael, and I'll just hold this for you because we've got double mic.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much. In your, so I get this right, I took a picture of it. In your all-me system, you have valence and arousal as your guardrails, right? Are you, the valence has been shown through Spotify to be pretty effective. Are you marrying what Spotify has done? Curious how you are defining the valence.
Yeah, so in this case, we made our own model to recognize valence and arousal of sound. Spotify library has those annotations, and it's a lot of data there, but they do it for music. And this system is doing sound design in a way, so we needed something for sound. And the way we did it is documented in a number of papers, but it's worth explaining for everyone because this is called ground truthing. So it's this idea that we will use Mechanical Turk online and people will listen to sound. And we get them to say, hey, is this sound, is it happy, sad, or more happy and sad than this other one? So basically we measure. Then we check if people agree with each other. If people disagree that this is an happy sound, then maybe we perceive happiness in sounds differently. It turns out people do agree. And if the inter-rater agreement is high enough, then we're confident that this notion actually exists, and perceptually there's some stability there. Therefore, we keep on collecting data. Once we have enough data, then we train an AI model to do that task. And all of a sudden, we don't need humans anymore. And then we go through our database of sound, and we can annotate the valence and arousal, in other words, the emotion that each sound is being perceived as.
Great, thank you so much. I think you had a question, Francesca?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your talk. I lived in Canada for 9 years. Canada is generally more environmentally conscious than the US. I was wondering what discussions you're having in your communities about the environmental impact of AI.
Well, small data is not as greedy as big data. So that's another reason to adopt a small data approach. Now, I want to say something controversial here. We love saying controversial things, especially when you have a French accent. It turns out, of course, AI and computing in general and those data centers are sucking water and energy, and we should find solutions. And there are great innovation and great solutions being put forward by that community under the pressure we know they are under. But the truth is also that I'm good enough with numbers so that I check things online, and the International Environment Agency releases numbers every year. And as of this year, the entirety of computing, including all of the data centers and all of the AI you can think of, is less than 3% of our energy consumption. 62% goes to heating and cooling down buildings, which here, as in Canada, we can feel very guilty for. And so then there's transportation for 12%. And so in other words, if you do the calculation and you want to save the planet, you will spend less energy doing ChatGPT for 3 days nonstop than dropping your kids at school at a heated or cooled down school 5 minutes away using a car. And so that's a bit of a controversial way to answer, but what I'm saying is in the grand scheme of things, this is not a problem whatsoever. The problem with the environment is the big N, which is the number of humans.
Are there other questions from the crowd? Yes.
Hi there. Thank you for your interesting talk. My question's about music generation. As a musician, for me, like the creation of music is fundamentally social. And so my question is, what do you do, or do you lose like the somatic mutuality of working with other musicians and improvising when you're using AI tools?
That's a really great question. Yes, you do lose when using disembodied agents. And in fact, a research area is to see how do we embody those agents so that those somatic elements are there. And for everyone, when you play with someone, it's really important, the co-presence. Like for example, when the saxophonist is doing, then you know what's gonna come next. You know, after doing this big breath, he's gonna start blowing into the saxophone. And so all those cues are really, really important. And yes, you lose them. It's not my research, but Greg Corness, who did a PhD in my school, did some research on that, so I would be happy to share that with you. Very interesting research where two musicians are playing next to each other, then you put a drape in between the two, but they're still in the same space, they can't see each other, then you put them remotely, through a connection to see if, even like the drape would still allow some things to go through, and then you replace one of the musicians with an AI, and you compare those different conditions to see what do you lose exactly, and you do lose quite a bit. Yeah.
I had a related question to that, and that has to do with improvisational music versus pre-composed music. Are you exploring pre-composed scores that then can exist and be replicated over and over again, or is it mostly improvised performance?
A little bit of both. So yeah, what I showed here today was mostly improvised and experimental, but there is a possibility to give to the agents, a score like you do in jazz, so a chord progression and things like that, a scenario, and so that the agents knows a little bit where we're going in the future, which helps the agents to decide what to do in the now, like it does for humans. So both are possible, yeah.
Interesting. Yes.
Also related, but you talked about the humans who were co-creating with the agents losing a sense of authorship. I was curious, especially for beginners, if they were co-creating with a more experienced musician, do they also lose that sense of authorship?
Yeah, so the sense of authorship, it's more in computer-assisted creativity. When you use those generative systems that are embedded in software to make content, and then when you prompt, for example, so all those systems where you make a request and basically the system generates the content. But then in that, for those type of system, the user doesn't usually feel that he or she is the author of the content. In other words, if you ask DALL-E for an image, it will give you a great image, but you don't feel it's your image. And you didn't make it because literally you didn't make it. And so some of the interesting questions we're looking at is what does it take for some, if not all, of that authorship to still be there, right? Probably more than just prompting. You need to have more control. Maybe that's why all the systems that take, that's why we like in feeling, this idea of starting with some music. So the user has to do something creative and provide some music to start with, and then the system will just build upon that, transform, augment that content. And in that sense, we feel there's more authorship because some of the human input is there from the get-go. That's one strategy. But this is an open question. And as the systems get deployed in every domain for every possible creative task, if you name a creative task that is computer mediated, I know an AI system for it. So systematically, like the computerization of society has been quite systematic and brutal, not democratic. We never voted to use a computer 8 hours a day on average. For AI, it's exactly the same. It seems like the debate before, how are we going to deploy that, where and how, is not really happening. And so that's why those research are really timely now, and we need to study what's left of us when we are moving to a workplace in which we're going to be sitting in front of those machines, generating content all day long. Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah? Do we have more? Yeah?
Just a question about students. What type of student do you see wanting to come to your lab, and how are you attracting students to come work with you?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate. AI is obviously super trendy, and students who are in panic mode vis-a-vis our future, maybe even more than us adults, have understood though that one of the things that seems to be trending and not going anywhere is learning how to design AI system. If AI is taking over, the people who design AI systems are the one who will do well. And so in that sense, we're overwhelmed with the demand of students. I don't know, I have hundreds of applicants every year to join the lab. So that's really not a problem to attract them. And they're doing really well in general. And we're looking for those students who have often an interdisciplinary sort of background, so strong math and computing for the system programming and design side, and then some sort of creative agency as well, so that they can use those systems with this idea of participatory design that I was pitching at the beginning. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Philippe. Can you share some of the projects you worked on focusing on functional generation? So I know you have a lot of projects, like targeting health purposes and others. So I'd like to hear some of your projects.
Yes, so in the last decade or so, we've been looking at, okay, we have those systems that generate great content. In fact, we call them human competitive. Okay, a human can tell the difference between what our system generates and what a human creator would make. And from there on, it's not a question of trying to improve those generators anymore because they work. It's more how do you going to use them. And functional generation is really this idea of generating for a purpose. And so we've been working with music therapists. Music therapy works. There's no doubt about it. The only reason you don't have a music therapist yourself is because you don't have, phase 4 cancer, and that's probably a good news. And so you self-medicate music. You know, when you're happy, you listen to this one. When you're sad, you listen to this one, etc. But it turns out with those adaptive generative systems that learn your preferences, we can do better. Because for some people, heavy metal is very relaxing. It doesn't relax me, but I know people who listen to it for relaxation. And so by systems that learn your preference and what works for you, especially with biofeedback now, we can go that way. So we had 2 students running a company. It's now folded where they were doing functional soundscape generation on iOS. I have now another student doing a company where we do similar things with biofeedback, where we do breathing exercise. And the system will learn because everyone breathes differently, and there's some exercise, if you do it wrong, then your heart starts palpitating, or you stop breathing and you pass out, like that's bad. So by tracking the flow zone for that particular activity, the breathing, we can progressively get more and more complex breathing exercise being generated by the system to fit that particular task. 2 more quick examples. One is we use virtual agents in VR chat for helping ESL speakers. A lot of ESL speakers, a lot of it has to do with confidence and the fear of speaking in front of other humans who know the language way better. And so by putting artificial agents, which are actually really good, very clear, their grammar is really perfect. You've seen ChatGPT, doesn't make a lot of mistakes at the grammatical level, so we can use those students and learners. And then finally, I work with a company where we generate music, content, and interaction for type 2 diabetic patients so that they stay on track with their plan. And here it is believed that putting some humor, entertainment, and gamify some of the interaction can be, in that case, a lifesaver. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for the talk.
It's okay. I can hold it. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. My question was, can you speak more to that sense of authorship in terms of a specific community? If you're sort of creating small batch models, like how do people create their training data? How do they feel a sense of ownership over the information that is being used to create the small systems, and then be able to create with those tools?
Yeah. So this study is not published yet, but we did study that. So we believe that with small data and model crafting, the idea is to seize the mean of productions and empower artists to go through the entire pipeline, from data, so the status of the data, etc., and then the model, and then what do you do with the model. And we do observe, and there's a study coming up, we do observe indeed that it changes completely the sense of authorship. If it's my data and my model, then definitely the work that comes out is mine, and I'm the author of the entire thing, right? So all of a sudden it becomes much, much more clear for everyone involved where the authorship lies. And then it also is a great educational tool, I would say, because once you've gone through that entire pipeline by yourself, then you sort of know exactly what AI and how important it is to select the data and the right ones and to make sure that they're selected the right way. You can ask yourself a question about the model and how one's craft a model and what's coming into the model and why is it that we never have access to that with the AI systems that are sold to us. And then, we learn how to exploit that model to make artwork. So I would say what we show so far is definitely that makes a big difference. This move from big data and just navigating a big model trained on everyone else's work versus training your own model.
Thank you so much. I think that that's a great place to start unless there are any final questions going around. Philipe, thank you so much. I have learned so much today, and thank you to all of you to spend your time here with us. We would love to keep the conversation going. There are snacks and receptions. Please come up and speak with Philipe more and continue that great conversation going, and we'll see you next month for the next Laser Talk. Thanks, everyone.